What's going on, fight fans? I'm back here with another video here set for you guys. Finally, we took a week off and we are right back into action with the UFC Fight Night, the recap in Kansas City. Not only are we back with the UFC events, but we are in a crowded arena for a fight night. A kind of banger stack card, especially for the main card. A lot of notable names in the UFC so far, headlined obviously by Carlos Prates and Ian Garry. We're going to get into this recap, into this review. And starting off with the card, we had Chelsea Chandler go against Jocelyn Edwards. I went with Jocelyn Edwards because I think she was just an overall better fighter than Chelsea Chandler all around and everything, unless it was like wrestling, grappling based. Jocelyn Edwards and Chelsea Chandler get into a nice little scrap between each other. They're throwing some haymakers, and then I just noticed that Jocelyn Edwards just started landing the straight right over and over. She landed, I want to say, maybe 2 or 3 times, kind of stunned Chelsea Chandler, and then on along the octagon cage, a nasty left hook right on the button, slumps down Chelsea Chandler, puts her down, and while she's down and out, a little bit of ground and pound, but the referee's going to jump in there and stop it for a TKO victory for Jocelyn Edwards. Start off the card hot. Start off WMMA has been kind of on a streak where most of the fights have been in finishes, and most of the fights have actually been pretty entertaining, for being quite honest. So we jump into there, and now moving on up the card, we got Timmy Kawamba versus Roberto Romero. Last time out, I believe most notably, he had the fight against David Onama, where it was kind of a slug-out fest between these two guys, and they eventually got knocked out. Timmy Kawamba, I think this was his UFC debut, first time ever seeing him fight, especially being in the UFC, and this guy was just on fire from the onset, especially from the first round. Continuously wobbling Roberto Romero kind of all over the octagon. His striking and kickboxing was like elite, like it was looking really crisp in there. Romero had his moments here and there. I'm not going to take anything away from him. He still was being competitive in there. He wasn't just in there to get showcased on. But in the second round, while Timmy Kawamba's having an incredible first, Timmy Cuomo starting to pour on more offense. He's starting to hurt Roberto Romero a lot more. And then we get the highlight reel KO of the card, probably KO of the year if we're being quite honest. A flying knee right on the chin of Roberto Romero. And this is before this guy ate like a head kick, which was insane. He ate a head kick, and then after that he's taking this flying knee right on the chin. He's taking a lot of punishment throughout the entirety of this fight. Again, he's getting outclassed right on the feet. And Jesus, dude, Timmy Kawamba. Good Lord, have mercy on your soul, brother. Highlight reel KO with the flying knee right on the chin. Slumped him out. I think he got a little bit of ground and pound, or he just walked it off. I don't really remember from there, but I just remember this flying knee highlight KO that was absolutely absurd. And moving on up the card, we got a fight that I wish we didn't have because both of these beautiful gals unfortunately had to put it on each other. Jacqueline Amore Mim versus Polyana Viana. And just from the onset, especially from the first round, Jacqueline Amore Mim was completely dominant against Polyana Viana with the takedown, having the top control, with the ground and pound, with threatening submissions, and having Polyana Viana in these pretty bad pretzel type of situations, even though it's kind of nice to be able to see. Anyways, it was a dominant performance by Amore Mim. If you go into the second round, and while she was already dominant, she didn't really do much of note. As I've just said, as in the first round, she was very dominant with the top control. She literally was on top the entire time. Nice. Moving into the second round, she then gets another takedown, is more dominant, starting to threaten more with the submissions. Cinches in, she gets right under the chin, this rear naked choke. She has it under the chin. She doesn't have it fully locked in just yet. And just before it's fully locked in, Polyana already has her hand up like, yo, I'm about to tap right now. You already know she was about to tap. She wasn't even trying to fight the hands. She wasn't trying to do anything else. She got it right under the chin, that being Amore Mim. Gets a submission victory over Polyana Viana, and we're right now on a streak on this UFC card with 3 back-to-back-to-back finishes, even though this one was kind of, lackluster with the ladies. But again, another finish for WMMA is a win in general. And moving on up the card, we got a superstar debut for Malcolm Wellmaker, making his UFC debut against Cameron Simon, UFC prospect that's been kind of through the ringer. recently lost that, to decision against C-Rod, who is the prospect killer himself, and Payne Talbot, who was on an absolute tear until he ran into, the UFC vet that, Ronnie Barcelos has put his ass out. Pretty much dominated him through the entirety of this fight. Going in with Cameron Simon is kind of more of a veteran, has a little bit more experience than Malcolm Wellmaker. I went with Cameron Simon in this one because I still kind of believed in the potential that he still had in his career. But Malcolm Wellmaker had the absolute biggest negator in this fight, and that was the power. That one punch power in that bantamweight division is just on another level. That one touch maker that Wellmaker got will definitely put your ass out, and that's exactly what he did. Tagging the beautifully in the southpaw position with a beautiful right hook right on the chin. And from the onset, right when he touched Cameron Simon's chin, he was out before he even got to the canvas. Little bit of ground and pound on him. Malcolm Wellmaker making a name for himself, being kind of real big with his social media following, having the KO victory that he had on the Dana White Contender Series, now getting a KO, thankfully in a crowded arena event. With him having that kind of push for himself, now people are knowing him. He's having one of the biggest highlight KOs in the UFC so far, and to start off his career, they did talk about how they already have the headlining event of UFC Atlanta with Woquan Buckley versus Kamaru Usman. Malcolm Wellmaker is from Augusta, Georgia. It is a no-brainer to put him on that card, 100%. Making a name for himself, you matchmake him pretty well in the bantamweight division. I don't know if you want to put him up against another prospect, or maybe you can go against, a little veteran that has, like an older, wily vet that has a name so far. None of the names are coming to me. Definitely don't put him against Ronnie Barcelos. I mean, if he's doing that against Payne Talbot, I can only imagine what he's going to do to Malcolm Wellmaker. Um, Names are not coming to me as of right now. Definitely not in the ranking so far. But a name for Malcolm Wellmaker, highlight, KO, Atlanta, card. He's from there. He's from the area. Do it. No brainer. Moving on up the card, we got Damon Blackshear versus Alatang Healy. We went from 4 straight finishes on this UFC card on a fire to, going back to a decision. Now, this fight wasn't absolutely trash. Damon Blackshear was on a mission. He came out with like a flying knee or like a flying front kick. He was on from the onset, especially from his last fight that he had against Cody Gibson, where he looked pretty lackluster in that first round that he was in with Cody Gibson. His striking was very, not there. He looked like he just came off like a damn Xanax or a Percocet, or he took some melatonin before this fight started against Cody Gibson, and he wasn't really awake for that round, and he definitely reversed it this time where he was on it from the onset, and that's something that I actually really wanted to be able to see, especially from the last performance again from Blackshear against Alatang Healy, who is, UFC vet, has got wins here and there, not really of notice. I think he's coming off a loss as well. Alatang Healy is competitive, and this fight was competitive between these two guys. I think the Blonde Blackshear did the better work in the first round, where his kickboxing and boxing was a lot more cleaner. He was putting on the pressure. He was moving a lot forward, and then the flip then switched, or the script then flipped, when then Alatang Healy was starting to press in more forward against Damon Blackshear. He was coming forward. He was pressuring more. He was landing, I think, the bigger and better shots in that second round. So I think it was kind of even 1-1, even though you could be able to see Blackshear winning that type of round because he had some moments here and there in that second. But I thought Alatang Healy, especially with him bringing on that pressure and moving forward, he was looking a lot better in that second round. Then you go back to the third round, and while it was kind of a boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai type of matchup between these two guys, where it wasn't an absolute bang fest, but it was actually pretty decent of a fight. Crowd was booing a little bit. They want to see some type of violence, and they want to see some type of finishes after we just got 4 straight. Completely understand it. But Damon Blackshear is back on the pressure, back on putting the pace, and this is a straight-up boxing match from there on. The kicks were kind of here and there from Alatang Healy, but Damon Blackshear just continuously countered striking, just continued just moving on forward, just straight with the hands, and he was doing a lot better work, making Alatang Healy miss a lot more while he was landing his shots and pot shotting Alatang Healy a lot better in those exchanges that they did have within each other. So I gave Damon Blackshear that third round, had it 2-1. I think he was the obvious winner on this card. And he looked a lot better than what he needs to be. He's streaking as of right now. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Bump him up and get him back to another name. I know he had a early KO loss against Montel Jackson beforehand, before his 3-fight win streak. So maybe he get him somebody up to there, like towards the rankings, not too close, but a name just enough that you can be able to put in there. Maybe somebody like Nate the Train. He's had run-ins with Mario Batista earlier before, but I think Mario Batista is probably not leaps and bounds, but he's a level above a name like a Damon Blackshear. But get somebody towards that range for Damon Blackshear. I think that's up next for him in his career in the next fight. And moving on up the card, we got Chris Gutierrez versus John Castaneda. 100% the fight that you always expect is going to happen when you have Chris Gutierrez in a fight. I think this was his first fight in the welterweight division, because when I first seen him, especially on the screen, I was like, damn, Chris Gutierrez actually looks kind of built up. He actually looks like he has some meat on his bones. Usually he's kind of more scrawny and skinny. But I remembered he fought Son Yadong before, who is in the bantamweight division. Now he's in the featherweight division in the fight against John Castaneda. And this was a typical split decision, 29-28 victory for Chris Gutierrez, where it's always also close. The inside low kicks, the outside low kicks, the kicks are pretty nice for Chris Gutierrez. There always works. His jab is effective. He landed a pretty good right hand that wobbled John Castaneda in that first round. That's what I think kind of gave Chris Gutierrez that round. But then you move into the second, where it was kind of more or less the same. John Castaneda gets takedowns, but he doesn't really do much with it. Chris Gutierrez is just continuously doing the same things again that he usually always does with the kicks and the jabs, and John Castaneda is making it close and making it competitive, because Chris Gutierrez has not really much to be able to do much other than just that. Third round, more or less the same. This is just, I mean, again, I can't. If you've seen a Chris Gutierrez fight, you know exactly what happened into this fight. Typical run-of-the-mill type of fight for Chris Gutierrez, where he sneaks out a victory, 28-29 split decision, where it's also close, where it's literally just right there to be able to give, but he just barely low kicks more than the opponent that he's up against, who's just outside the rankings, like a name like John Castaneda, who made it a little bit closer and a little bit more interesting with the takedowns and the grappling, and his stand-up game was a little bit competitive. Like, he was doing a little bit better work in the second round for moments, and he was looking like he was about to take over the round, but then he just let Chris Gutierrez get back right into his rhythm again. It was typical, normal, run-of-the-mill type of thing. I could literally go over the same thing. If Chris Gutierrez is going to be fighting your card, expect a type of fight like this, unless he gets knocked out. Goes up against a power puncher and he just gets slept out of there. That's the only thing that's kind of different for a Chris Gutierrez fight, if we're being quite honest. But he's never, in my opinion, going to get up to that type of level or caliber of a fighter. And then you could be like, yeah, well, he fought Son Yadong, and Son Yadong has a lot of power, but he didn't KO him. Son Yadong outclassed him and beat him up. This is what Chris Gutierrez is. And moving on up the card, we got Evan Elder versus Gage Young. A nice little scrap between these two guys. It was very, very interesting. But really, the story of this fight was Evan Elder's kicks. His kickboxing was just crisp. It was on another level here tonight against Gage Young, who I believe was taking this fight on short notice and is kind of a UFC debutant. Both of these guys are training partners, so they kind of know the in and outs of between these two guys. But just the kick game of Evan Elder was just on fire. The body kicks, the straight unorthodox switch kick, or not even, it wasn't even a switch kick. It was just a front side kick right into the body. It was landing over and over. Inside low kicks, outside low kicks, high kicks, switch kicks. Evan Elder was just keeping the game busy over and over with Gage Young. Gage Young, I got to give him a lot of props, bro, because he was taking a lot of punishment. Whether it was landing or it wasn't landing, Evan Elder was throwing kicks with emphasis. And then once his kick game started to flourish, and he had Gage Young worried about whatever kick was coming towards his way, he then started to mix things up with his hands. He started to get where he started to dip low and really think about him jabbing to the body and jabbing up top, where he would come down and then pop right up and then land a nice sweet right hand right down the pipe right over the guard of Gage Young. And Gage Young had his moments. This fight was very competitive between these two. Gage Young was landing his kicks as well, was doing pretty good with the boxing, but wasn't landing as effectively as an Evan Elder. Evan Elder, in my opinion, throughout the majority of this fight, was doing the more cleaner and better work, especially with the kicks. The kicks for Evan Elder was really the story of this fight, where it dictated everything else that was going to go on. Not a much of grappling and clinching in this one, thankfully. Even though there was times and there was moments that they were Evan Elder and the kickboxing game, and especially again the kicks, they were just perfect. They were just where it needed to be able to be, and he got the victory over Gage Young, who was very very game, and also, I mean, is a hell of a fighter, because he was definitely taking some punishment in that one. And moving on up the card, we got the recently unretired Matt Schnell versus Jimmy Flick. I went with Matt Schnell in this one. I just think technique-wise and technicalities, Matt Schnell was just a better fighter compared to a Jimmy Flick. Even though I was really worried about Matt Schnell's chin, I wasn't really worried about Jimmy Flick and the stand-up at all, if I'm being completely honest. So it kind of negated the chin factor of Matt Schnell. And, man, at first I was really, really worried, because in that first round, Jimmy Flick was getting the takedowns, having the top control, threatening with submissions, really doing the majority of the work and making Matt Schnell look like he actually should have just retired instead of actually coming back into the fight game. Going into the second round, is it a lot more competitive. Again, Jimmy Flick is having more top control, doing more work, doing some ground and pound, and is really starting to throw in some submissions, having times where he's almost having this arm triangle in, and Matt Schnell is just reversing position, gets top control, lands some nasty ground and pound, then also as well starting to throw with some submissions, that being guillotine towards, I believe, the end of the second round. So it's very close and competitive, but while damaging wise and how it's going, Matt Schnell did a better job of damage wise and how it was looking towards in this fight compared to Jimmy Flick, even though Jimmy Flick was doing the better work in the first half of this round, that being the second. Moving into the third, we're just getting back and forth, just guillotine after guillotine attempt after guillotine attempt after guillotine attempt. It was absolutely insane. The crowd was actually getting into it. This was damn near, in my opinion, the fight of the night between these two guys, because yeah, grappling could actually be fun sometimes, where there's literal threatening submissions coming in time after time after time, and you just think that this dude is going to get it. You think that this dude is going to get it, and you never really know, so you're on your toes. Jimmy Flick was threatening with the guillotines, Matt Schnell then reversing positions and then getting top control, and then him trying to be able to get a guillotine as well. Scrambles all over. It's really just insane between these two guys. They're going back and forth. The majority and the better work out of this round is coming from Matt Schnell. I believe he did deserve the win, and he got the win. Thankfully, he did a well-deserved win, a nice win to be able to come back from actually thinking about he was going to retire from his career, coming back against, lower-level competition like a Jimmy Flick, but it's nice to be able to see that you're getting in there, getting in these positions, that being the scrambles, because last time out he was in a fight against Cody Durden, and he got submitted, I believe, in like the second or first round. So it was good to be able to see that Matt Schnell still has that in his game, was, again, threatening with all these submissions, because he really almost had it, and he almost had an RNC that towards the end of the third round that was really going to be the end of the finish, until Jimmy Flick got that done with having 2-on-1, ripping that apart. So a lot of great work between both of these guys, a lot of great grappling to be able to see, and a lot of submission threats that was really entertaining to be able to get into. And moving on now to the main card, we got Ikram Maliskarov versus Andre Muniz, and thankfully we got back into the finishes. First round finish by Ikram Maliskarov. He literally didn't really do much because this fight was done within the first round, thankfully. It was nice to see Andre Muniz to be flattened out on the canvas like that, just taking it didn't even look like it was landed heavy at all, just landed on the right side of or left side of the temple of Andre Muniz. A nice little sneaky left hook that got through the guard of Andre Muniz, dropped him down, wobbled him back, dropped him down. Nice ground and pound for Ikram Maliskarov. He called for like a top 10 opponent, 100% no go. I think he needs to get one more unranked opponent, or maybe like barely the rankings, maybe like 15 or 16 in the UFC, for him to be able to really stake his claim, to really think that he's going to be that next type of level of fighter that he was prospected to be. He only lost to Hamza and Robert Whitaker, who is one of the best in the middleweight division. So you see the obvious potential that he has. He comes from Dagestan, Russia. You already have the build that he has, but he actually has some power and actually is pretty decent on the feet with his kickboxing. So Ikram Aliskerov gets the victory in easy fashion, as expected, as we needed it to be, and thankfully it was. We got that, but top 10 opponent for Ikram, no, not just yet. I think maybe one more out of the rankings, or maybe just barely top 15. Maybe you can match him up against somebody like Marvin Vettori, who's just coming off a loss. Gregory Rodriguez, that would be a banger of a fight. Gregory Rodriguez, maybe like an Abus Magomedov, who really just came off a victory as of right now. Bruno Fajeda. Put him against some bangers, some bigger dudes that, again, are barely just out of the rankings, but have a little bit more momentum as of right now than Ikram Aliskerov. And moving it up the card, we got possibly the knockout of the year. I know earlier I said Timmy Kawamba had the knockout of the year, but we actually have the knockout of the year as of right now, that being Randy Brown versus Nicholas Dalby. Oh my God, what a moment. We got Justin Gaethje 2.0, but the Nordic version. It was absolutely insane. Randy Brown was on fire from the onset, especially in that first round. His kickboxing and boxing game, especially at range against Nicholas Dalby, was just beautiful to be able to see. Really had Nicholas Dalby worried because he couldn't be able to get in his distance and range because everything was on the end of the punches and kicks of Randy Brown. He was absolutely doing tremendous work, fucking up the nose of Nicholas Dalby, hitting him with a beautiful right or left hook right on the nose that literally just had it turning to the side. It was disgusting but beautiful at the same exact time to be able to see Randy Brown putting in his work, looking tremendous, looking like the fighter. He was like 9-1 out of his like last 10 fights that he's had, so he's been absolutely on a streak, even though last time out he lost out to Brian Battle, which was a close fight, but I did think Brian Battle did eke out that win in the clinch work between these two guys. Everybody has their opinions, but whatever. Randy Brown then gets dropped by an overhand right by Nicholas Dalby. Hurt him bad towards the end of the first round. Nicholas Dalby jumps on it, gets top control. Doesn't really do much. Kind of is just laying on him because he has him hurt, but he wants to be able to land some ground and pound to be able to hurt him more. Randy Brown negates that with the work on the ground. Round overall goes to Randy Brown, but a great momentum moment, maybe changing and shifting for Nicholas Dalby. We go into the second round, and we noticed that that wasn't actually just the case. That was just a nice moment that Nicholas Dalby landing that beautiful overhand right that actually wobbled Randy Brown pretty bad. That was a great moment, though, in what it is. Randy Brown is then putting it on Nicholas Dalby even more. Just started really planting his feet a lot more, landing a lot more harder on Nicholas Dalby. Nicholas Dalby is like, you know what? Forget it. I'm gonna get finished, or I'm just gonna go out on my on my shield as of right now. My nose is messed up. My gas tank is probably gonna go. I can't even breathe correctly as of right now. Let's just get into some exchanges. They get into some exchanges, and Randy Brown just lands this beautiful on the button hook right on the chin of Nicholas Dalby. Again, like I said earlier, Justin Gaethje 2.0. Beautiful moment from Randy Brown, getting a nice KO victory over a name who is a pest to be able to deal with the majority of the time, that being Nicholas Dalby. Could be out on his way, as this is the first time he's ever got finished, I believe, ever, or in the UFC just in general. So a big accomplishment from Randy Brown, where he's now coming into his ways. He's still only like 34, 33, around this age range. I think you put him back up to potentially get to that number 15 or maybe just below in the rankings of type of guys in the welterweight division. You match him up correctly, because Randy Brown, with this KO highlight victory, is back to putting his name back up with those likes in the welterweight division. And moving up the card, we got An absolute stinkfest in the middleweight division. The two gas giants who absolutely have nothing in their gas tank. I don't know what their conditioning is, but it is absolutely atrocious. Michel Pereira versus Abus Magomedov. Abus Magomedov literally won this fight because Michel Pereira is a idiot dum dum. He's a dum dum. He's really like I don't know. I don't know. He's just coming off the loss against Fluffy Hernandez where he literally just had a round of a gas tank and then from there he got absolutely whooped on for the rest of the fight. He's coming into this fight against Abus Magomedov who's known kind of similar for the same things that Michel Pereira has with gas tanks problems. And just from the onset, he usually when you see Michel Pereira, he's usually crazy. He's a showman. He's out there. He's flashy techniques. He's a wild man in there. He's just taking these wild risks and chances. And he just looks so timid. He looks so. He came out and he did this choreography type dance in his walkout, and that literally burned all his gas tank. I mean, I was thinking like, what is this? I don't know, man. I want this channel to be monetized. I want this video to be monetized, even though I can't monetize it as of right now. And this is just it. This was in like, God, man, these guys shouldn't get paid. That's what I think. Especially, especially the blame goes to Michel Pereira because at least in the first round, Abu Smagomedov landed a nice little left hook that stunned Michel Pereira. He was landing his front kick teep pretty well, was effective with the range, and he was landing a few shots throughout the entirety of the fight where he did wobble and hurt Michel Pereira multiple times. And Michel Pereira had like one moment or maybe two where he wobbled Abu Smagomedov, but that was just because of his gas tank being horrendous. Abu Smagomedov landed a nice like right hand down the pipe in the third round that hurt Michel Pereira, and if he just walked him down and hit him with maybe one or two more shots, he would have knocked him out. But he couldn't be able to do that because he was so gassed himself. It is atrocious. This is your career. This is your livelihood. This is how you get paid, and this is what you have. This is what you're able to showcase, regardless of the power and the technique that you got. You couldn't be able to go past 5-6 minutes. You kidding me? Are you kidding, bro? Michel Pereira, man. If you're gonna be who you are, bro, just be who you are, man. Don't go into the game plan of the first two rounds I'm gonna take off. I'm gonna let himself gas out in the third round. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna go pedal to the middle. I'm gonna get him out of there. You don't have the gas tank to go past the first round, brother. You don't. So what? You're not a genius. Clearly, you're an idiot. You're a big dum dum, and you. I don't know. I don't want to. Man, unless Michel Pereira is fighting a can, I want him cut from the UFC. That was atrocious. That was an atrocious performance. Unless he had like an illness or he was dealing with an injury or whatever the case may be. But even then, dude, you're coming out and you're dancing on your walkout. Abu Smagomedov won the fight because he did one more mile of cardio than Michel Pereira a day. Literally, that's how he won. Atrocious. Atrocious. We call these people athletes. That is embarrassing. Anyways, moving on to the feature fight. We got David Onama versus Giga Chikadze. We go back to having actual fights on this card, thankfully. And I think this one was very, very close. Very, very close. I think damn near controversial. Very controversial. First round, Giga Chikadze comes out, and he looks as impressive as he usually always does. The explosive techniques, the explosive kicks that he just throws out there, they're a problem to be able to deal with. If you're able to get past through the first round with Giga Chikadze and he starts to slow down and his technique and his explosivity starts to slow down, you're able to do a lot better work against him. But in that first round, Giga Chikadze, again, first hand against David Onama, again, was just doing tremendous work in that first round with the kicks. And that's exactly what he's known for. David Onama had a lot of issues. He would land some counter shots and he would throw some shots here back in there. But Giga Chikadze 100% won that first round. We're going to the second round. And again, it looks like Giga Chikadze is more dominant in this round, especially with it being on the feet. And while it is on the feet, and David Onama has his moments here and there, again, like in the first round, but Giga Chikadze is starting to slow down a little bit more. David Onama then gets a takedown, gets top control, doesn't really do much. I mean, I guess, bro. I guess. I guess if you are kind of competitive on the feet and you get a takedown, I guess you win the round because that's how he won the round. You go into the third round, similar thing. But this time, David Onama is actually a lot more competitive. Is actually more of a 50-50 on the feet, in my opinion. Even though I think Giga Chikadze's having better work, especially with the boxing, with the hands, and he's doing a lot more. He's having a lot more volume. He's putting a lot more out there. He's titting for tatting as of right now with David Onama. But David Onama, again, is putting in more work. I think better work than what he was doing in the second round. And then David Onama gets another takedown. And yeah, I mean, David Onama has had some controversial decisions go his way. Obviously, he's the younger guy. He's a prospect. You're probably going to be able to do that and get away with it more often. A win against Giga Chikadze is impressive because Giga Chikadze is actually a pretty good, decent fighter, especially with his stand-up. But I don't know if David Onama won this fight, if I'm being completely honest. If you're just competitive with somebody, even though you're losing on the feet, you're not winning the round. And just because you get the takedown and you have top control, and yeah, you throw in a submission there and maybe you land some ground and pound here and there, but it's not really that effective. I mean, are you really winning? I mean, I guess you are, but I don't know. David Onama got the decision, but I really could have thought that Giga Chikadze could have got the decision. I think he did a lot better work, especially on the feet. And with the takedowns on the top control that David Onama had, he didn't really do much, I guess. And we move on to the co-main event, which was the swan song for Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith versus Zhang Ming Yang. And this is exactly what we expected it to be. First round TKO victory for Zhang Ming Yang. If you expected anything else more than that, then you haven't been watching Anthony Smith fight, and you haven't been watching his fights as of recent. This was for the par. Even though, yes, Anthony Smith had his moments, landing in some nice elbows from range. He cut up Zhang Ming Yang a little bit, was doing that. But besides that, he couldn't be able to deal with the punishment. And after a while, he wasn't taking the punishment as well. And then he kind of just went into a shell per normal. And he just got beat up. That's the moral of the story for Anthony Smith. Literally on his resume as of recent, besides just the guillotine victory over Victor Petrino, who you look at his career now, I mean, he got flatlined KO by Justin Jacoby, which was incredible as of last year, towards the end of last year, on that Tampa card. Anthony Smith has lost like all of his fights, pretty much, besides Ryan Spann as well. Yeah, if you expected anything different, I don't know. But he gets a send-off. He cries. He copes and seeds, saying that if this was 5 years earlier, he would have got him out of there. Flip tops the dude in the crowd. It was nice to be able to see. It was really entertaining. But thankfully, Anthony Smith is gone and out of the UFC and retires because it is like a sad sight to be able to see like a dude just curl up in a ball and just receive punishment. And yeah, that's it. And moving on to the main event, we got the highly anticipated matchup between Ian Machado Garry versus Carlos Prates. I went with Carlos Prates, thinking that Carlos Prates was going to catch him in this fight between these two guys. But, man, like, credit where credit is due. Ian Garry has a great IQ in this game. First through third, the first 3 rounds, Ian Machado Garry had the game plan of sticking and moving, being busy, having volume, landing his jab, landing the inside low kick, landing the high kick on the right hand side, right towards the left hand, the power hand of Carlos Prates, having that, just continuously hitting the arm, trying to wear it down so it doesn't have that much power, mixing in the grappling, even though he didn't really get any takedowns towards the end of the fight and towards the third round. Yeah, he did get takedowns, but he didn't really do much in terms of top control or damage or really much work. He was just mixing up the martial arts really well. That was the story of those first 3 rounds, where he was just, again, just outworking Carlos Prates, keeping him busy, keeping Carlos Prates at bay, not letting Carlos Prates get into his rhythm. Carlos Prates was more in a defensive shell. Every time he kind of curled up or any type of offense that was coming his way, he wasn't really looking for the counter. I think that was something that was like key to be able to get in this fight, because there was a lot of moments that, yes, Ian Garry was getting his offense off, and while he didn't really have a lot of commitment, but there was a few shots and a few combinations that he did have some commitment, especially on his right hooks, his right hands that he was throwing, and some nice uppercuts that he was landing on Carlos Prates. One of which I know that landed, that kind of wobbled and backed up Carlos Prates pretty well. And while all of these things are happening, and Ian Machado Garry is just continuously doing these things, Carlos Prates is kind of biding his time, is waiting way too long, throwing a lot more in single shots, not throwing anything in combination, is kind of worried about the speed of Ian Garry and getting countered his way, which is why he only threw single shots, nothing in combinations, and didn't really counter Ian Garry with anything, because he was kind of worried that he was going to get hit, he was going to hit air, or he was just going to counter with another nice shot that probably would have hurt him even worse. And that was pretty much the story of those first 3 rounds. And then we go into the fourth round, and Carlos Prates is 100% down on these cards. Ian Garry is looking like he's on the way to be able to get a nice victory over a surging prospect in the fighting nerds, that being Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates, then in that fourth round, started to gain more of his confidence. He just started throwing more, really, in reality. He started throwing more body kicks, throwing more inside low kicks, throwing the high kick as well, keeping Ian Garry busy with that leg coming towards his way. Started to land more of his jabs. Carlos Prates was landing his jab throughout the entirety of the fight, but again, he was just throwing it singularly. He wasn't throwing it with any type of combination or any type of 1-2s or 1-3 or anything really behind that. He would just throw it out singularly, but it was a stiff power jab that continuously wobbled and rocked Ian Garry. Not bad, but in the moment, he was a stiff jab that was right in the face of Ian Garry. And you could just see the momentum and the confidence and the build-up and the mojo started to get in Carlos Prates, where he started to be able to walk Ian Garry more down. Ian Garry started to, flail for these takedowns. He gets these takedowns. He gets more into these clinch moments where he's trying to be able to slow down Carlos Prates, take moments away, take time away from Carlos Prates, so that way he's not able to stay on the feet with him and, get away from the danger. But Carlos Prates is really starting to work a lot more, and he finally starts to land that left hand right on the chin. And it's starting to look really bad for Ian Garry, because while Carlos Prates wasn't really landing that much, when he was landing, and while he has been landing, that being in that fourth round, it started to hurt Ian Garry, and it started to mark him up. He had some cuts all over his face. It started to show up and pile up for Ian Garry. We go into the fifth round. Carlos Prates has his momentum. He's starting to show what he usually has been showing throughout the rest of the fights that he's had so far in his career. He's starting to walk him down. He's starting to shake off these takedowns. He has great takedown defense. It's something that's been able to see and be able to say, thankfully, by these fighting nerds guys, that yes, while their stand-up is incredible and the power is insane, the takedown defense is for real. You're not just going to be able to take them down and that's just going to be the end of the story and you're not going to have to worry about them and that's how you fraud check them. No, they have a really good takedown defense and they can keep things on the feet so that way they can manage themselves the best way so they can be able to get the victory. That usually always being the KO. And Carlos Prates is just starting to walk him down. He, again, is getting his mojo, getting his confidence, is doing a lot better, starting to hurt Ian Garry, pushing Ian Garry back, again, starting to shake off these takedowns. And it's just starting to look a lot bad for Ian Garry because he really doesn't know what else he can be able to do because he doesn't want to be able to stand in exchange with this guy late in this fight, knowing that Carlos Prates has that negator and that power to shut his lights out. And then, in an exchange, Ian McGarry gets, I'm not going to say dropped, but he gets wobbled. He then goes down. He flails for this takedown. Carlos Prates reverses position, gets top control, lands some nasty ground and pound. There's a minute left, and he's hurting Ian Garry. He is visibly damn near going to put his ass out. But Carlos Prates, this cigarette smoking, whiskey drinking, like, dude, like, oh man, if your cardio was just a little bit better, bro. Man, if he just landed more and more ground and pound, he would have got him out of there. He would have knocked him out. He would have been able to keep alive the knockout streak that he has in the UFC, staying undefeated in the UFC, and especially with the Fighting Nerds as well. That build up and this team has been incredible. But he just gassed out. He did, man. He did. If he would have poured on more of a pace, had Ian Garry more worried, had him maybe stand up on the feet, more wobbled and confused and not really knowing what he's kind of doing. He's just trying to be able to get in there and maybe, go for another takedown or flail like for a clinch exchange. He would have got him out of there. He would have got him out of there, but he didn't. He didn't pour on the pace. He didn't land more ground and pound, and he let it go to a decision, and he lost 3 rounds to 2, 48-47. Two judges had it that way. Tough, man. Tough, tough. I mean, yeah, it's like super like cuck level Ian Garry type of thing. But, nonetheless, credit where credit is due. The IQ is there. He's a smart dude. He knows that he doesn't have a lot of power in his hands, but he has just enough pop to be able to have you worried about it. He knows that he's faster, has a better volume, and has a better IQ. He's a more well-rounded fighter, has to be able to get the ability to get the takedowns. The jiu-jitsu and him threatening with, the chokes and the submissions weren't in this with this one because, obviously the takedown defense of Carlos Prates is for real. So, man, I mean, credit where credit is due, man. Ian Garry pulled it off. He got a decision victory over Carlos Prates. I don't think this is the end. I don't think this is a fraud check at all for Carlos Prates. I think this is a great experience for him to be able to learn from this loss. Not only learn from this loss, to be able to learn for himself that he has to put himself in these moments, especially in these 5-rounders or in these bigger fights against these bigger names, that yes, you have to start a lot earlier. You got to get in there. You can't just be able to fall back on the cards and just rely on your power, even though your power is one of the best in the welterweight division, 100%. You got to be able to win rounds, just besides you looking for your moments and looking for your shots. Again, the momentum was going his way the fourth and fifth round. I think he did better and won those rounds, but Ian Garry in totality, those first 3 rounds, he swept them. He did what he needed to be able to do. He's calling for a title shot fight. I think he needs one more victory. Maybe you pair him against somebody like, I don't think Shavkat is going to fight him again. I think Shavkat is going to come back soon and then go against somebody like Sean Brady. You already have Joaquin Buckley going to go against Kamaru Usman. JDM is going to be fighting for the belt against Bilal. I think Ian Garry maybe waits out, or maybe he gets another contender fight against maybe like a Colby Covington or something of those names of those ilk. But he's definitely gunning for the title, but I think he needs just one more. Especially coming off the loss. Close loss against Shavkat. Just got this nice victory over Carlos Prates. Cuck made a move, but what do you expect? Good IQ, credit where credit is due. But it is what it is. Carlos Prates, man, not a fraud check at all. Think you got to put him in there against, maybe you can do the Jeff Neal matchup again with this one, even though I am kind of scared because Jeff Neal has that type of power to be able to put you out, but so does Carlos Prates. But Carlos Prates defensively has some issues that he needs to be able to work out with. But yeah, it is what it is. That is my recap and reaction of this card. Like this video if you obviously like this video. Comment your opinions on what you thought happened on this card. Should Carlos Prates should have just emptied the tank and just get it out there more, man. He really had that. He had the KO there, man. He really did. He really, really did, man. And he sucks, brother. But whatever. Subscribe if you also like this content. If you like this channel. If you consistently come here all the time. I love that you do that. But I want you to stay here a little bit longer. So why not? Subscribe to the channel. I'm here. You're here. Why not? Thank you guys again for watching again, and peace.